Um, what I teach in here is deliberate. It is deliberate to teach you how to use the right vocabulary, or how to use vocabulary properly, how to understand what it is, what it means, and how to be able to use it in conversation. But in addition to that, the other goal that I have is to break particular prejudices about color from you, or break you of particular color prejudices that you have. And by no fault of your own, it's just how you have been, it's how you've been raised. Give me some latitude here. So when you open up a computer, your laptop, your desktop, you're immediately confronted with a palette of colors, and you're given the choice of black and white. And then if you go a little bit deeper, you'll also get some grays in there if you want to use them. But primarily you are given a palette of saturated colors. And so the palette that you are normally used to working with is by clicking on these saturated colors. It is my goal, part of my goal of this class is to get you to understand and to appreciate and to work with desaturated colors, colors that you don't necessarily choose to work with every day, however, you live in it every day. That's the tertiary colors. And so the tertiary colors are very much a part of your everyday life, but not necessarily the colors that you choose to design with, because they have not been so accessible really to you in the computer in the computer setting that has been given to you. So in the Opposites Attract project, first of all, I was very pleased with the compositions. I thought the compositions were fine. What I wasn't very pleased with was the representation of color palettes that I was seeing, and I would explain to you what I mean by that. Because I know it was somewhat frustrating to get this feedback, like too much conflict, not enough love, need more love. What does he mean by that? And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. But when you take two complements and you show one complement here and you show another complement here, even though there's a smooth transition, the focus of this project was on the word tertiary and analogous. So, when I see complement A here and complement B here, the interpretation of that palette is that I see opposite sides taking their own corner. Got it? I see side A and side B, and somewhere they meet in the middle, but for the most part, if you're like let's say your opposite that attracts is your best friend, and you guys, instead of loving each other, you guys are kind of doing this. You're facing off of each other because those two colors are pointing away from each other, okay? When I look at that palette, overall what I see is high saturation on those two ends. And so that does not, for me, tell that it is harmonious, that there's love, that there's compassion. It just shows me that they're two opposite positions and they've taken opposite sides of the palette. Now I asked you guys to do a blend from complement A to complement B, and then to work with this palette, right? What I would have expected you to do is to pull a muddy tertiary palette from the inside, because it is this palette that is harmonious, that is flaccid, that doesn't fight. It's not taking a different position. They're all common. Now, The problem is that mentally for you, these are dirty colors. These are not, I said harmony, harmonize them, make sure that they're getting along. And in your mind, harmony, we associate the word harmony with brightness and, and cheeriness and colorful, right? But in this case, harmony can actually is really about proximity. And looking at that dirty palette of colors that can be harmonious. Your flesh tone is harmonious because there are all sorts of different tertiaries in it, and it is a harmonious palette. So the idea of having to show these bright colors, some in the composition get away from that, start looking inside of that transition of palettes that you're making of colors. So then I said, I want conflict. So if I were to pull this palette and put it in here, what I would have is a very flaccid, very muddy, very dirty looking palette, but it would also be analogous. It would also be harmonious because there's no conflict in it. Then if I wanted to pull conflict, I would get a hue from here and stick it right in here, and then because there are always two sides to an argument, pull something from over here and put it right next to here. Then I have my conflict inside of all of this harmony. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that subtlety. And you don't even have to pull from all the way over here or all the way over here. You can, if I were to pull something from here and put it in this dead space in here, it's really gonna pop. And it's really gonna stick out. And then, if I put this right in there, and then if I take this and put it right next to it, I've got this fight. Now, some of you, didn't stick to this palette. Some of you, for your conflict, went and got like a totally different color from somewhere else and just sort of stuck it in there, and I have no idea why. When you have the answers here. Does that make sense? Questions? So, get out of the bright palette, get into the mud. That's what I wanted. Okay? All right. Wednesday, the next class we meet, we're not meeting here. On Wednesday, we are going to meet in Malone Hall. Okay? Do you know where Malone is? Does anybody not know where Malone is? We're going to meet in the courtyard. And over the weekend, actually yesterday, I went to Lowe's and I bought boards for you guys, for your portraits, for your propaganda portraits. And we're going to prime them on Wednesday. I'm going to do a demonstration. You don't have to bring anything other than wear clothes that you can dirty up, okay? Don't bring your good church clothes because you may get gesso on them. I will provide everything for you, brushes and gesso and the boards and everything else that you're gonna need. Just make sure that you come to Malone and not here, okay? Good, all right. So last night, you'll notice that some of you will notice that I graded your work, and I still am seeing, I'd say about 40% of you are still having issues identifying tones, understanding what a tone is. You're nodding your head. Talk to me about, let's have a conversation about tones. What's so difficult for you, son? What's so difficult? What is your issue with tones?
I'm not too sure what a tone is. So I just keep getting confused.
What do you think it is? So you have a hue, you have a color, right? Color. It could be any color you want. And then we have the value scale from black to white, right? We know if we put that color next to black, it's going to be lighter than the black. And we know if we put it next to the white, it's gonna be darker than the white, right? So we're looking for the actual value where they're equal in value to each other. It's a visual thing. It's trying to train your eyes to see. It's not easy, okay? When I gave you the 8 color hues and I told you to match them to the grays, how did you do in that?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No, I don't remember.
Did you get them all wrong?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
Well, did I respond, give you a grade, and said they're all wrong? That's how you would know.
I don't think so. I don't. Yeah.
You got some right.
Yeah.
There was not one person in this class that got them all wrong at the very end. So what I would do is go back to, this is for everybody, go back to that assignment and go, which ones do I think are correct? Part of the problem I'm reading right now is wanting the answer to sort of come to you, and really what it's going to take is sitting down with it and going, okay, let me just clear my head. What do I think is right? And first of all, I would probably do the opposite and go, what do I think is really wrong? Well, that looks dark, that looks light. So I'm gonna put that aside. This one I don't know about, but these two seem right to me. That's where you start, and then you take it from there. But you can't just, this isn't like, it's really not like a guessing game. And from what I'm hearing, I'm feeling that's your approach. It has to be more of an analysis. What am I doing? What am I thinking? Without having to overthink it, okay? If you're having problems with tone, I would suggest looking at that assignment almost every other day and checking yourself, because the more you look, the easier it becomes. If you don't spend any time with it whatsoever, it's still going to continue to be daunting to you, which is what it sounds like. So I would encourage you to do that. Today's assignment is going to torture you some more, because I'm going to give you guys another assignment dealing with tone, okay? In doing this assignment, and as a matter of fact, I realized that the problem with the majority of you, some of you having issues with tone, were very evident in the propaganda posters that you did, tint, shade, and tone. And I'll tell you, when I scored you down on your project for that, is when I was able to see a hard contrast between light and dark, between shape and background. If I could see that sharp contrast in it, I knew it was the wrong tone. But if I did not see a sharp contrast, and it seemed like the shape was blending into the background where it was almost not invisible, but the only thing I could see was like hue and gray, it was perfect. That's the perfect tone. So I'm always looking at these, and I'm looking at them in terms of the contrast between light and dark. Best I can give you. Okay, so concept. There is a road that goes from Dothan to Enterprise. I think it's called 84. And I was on 84 driving, and 84 does not have any streetlights. So the road itself is fairly dependent on daylight and headlights of your car. And it was a very, very foggy day, very foggy. Very gray, overcast, thick fog. And over in the distance, I could see that there's a bar way over there. And I couldn't see the building, but I could see the neon light that was showing. And it was radiant. Because the fog was covering over the light, it didn't give me a definitive line. It gave me sort of a blur line, a blur of a color that dissipated into the gray cloud. Okay? All right. Radiation. Give me an example of a visual example of what you would consider radiation or radiance.
Like a flashlight, maybe?
A flashlight. Ooh, a flashlight, because it's got that, but it's like a white light that dissipates out to darkness. So yes, it does radiate light, but there's a huge difference in value. When I was talking about that bar, there was no difference in value. It was just all one big blur. With the flashlight, you get bright white versus black. Got it? But that is the dissipation of light is interesting. Although I'm looking for, and I don't know if I would think of that so much as radiation. Give me another example of radiation, sir.
The sun.
The sun radiates. Again, yes, it's this yellow. It also radiates heat, correct? Give me another example of radiation. Any ideas?
I always think of nuclear stuff like radiation.
Nuclear radiation, yes. It's acidic green. It sort of emits this light. It's not really definitive line, and it dissipates, correct? Yeah. Very good. Okay. Your homework assignment. This is due Friday, 11:59 p.m. Okay? Adobe Illustrator, artboard is 10 by 10 inches. Color palette is NYC. Name of this project is called Radiation. Radiation. What it is, it's a palette of a hue and its relative value. Okay? Two things I want to make very clear. Do not use your blend tool for any of my compositions, and do not use the gradient tool for any of my compositions. Make shapes, okay? So this composition, and if you want to simplify it, can be a hue with its relative value. Make sure it's the right relative value, which is why you may want to go back to your relative value and see which one is correct so you could work with that palette if you're still not clear, all right? And I want you to create a composition that has 0 value contrast and is only contrasting in hue. So it's going to look really radiant. It's going to look acidic. It's not going to have definitive edges necessarily because everything is the same value. So there's no difference between light and dark. Okay? If you are not having a problem identifying tones, relative values, hues with their relative values, you might want to think a little bit further and go, are there two colors that share the same relative value? And can I use those two hues to that one relative value? Absolutely. Make sure it's the right relative value for both those hues. But for the most part, I would keep it simple. And if you're not sure, if you're really unclear with what a tone is, you'll know it when you put the composition together. And if you see an edge of dark and light, a contrast in dark, it's wrong. If you see no edge, then it is correct. No contrast in value, okay? Keep the compositions abstract. I'd like, and for those of you that have not been listening, let me be very clear. This instructor loves subtlety. I love variety, and I love simplicity. Okay? Don't overthink it. It's pretty simple. Questions? Yes.
Project date,
Radiation.
just that?
Yes, ma'am. And I've already opened up the deposit for it, due Friday at midnight, 11:59. You're more than welcome to post your compositions on. I will not be responding. I will be reading, okay? Too many people were asking me to art direct, and I'm not gonna do that. I don't art direct projects. I wanna see what you come and how you help each other, okay? If you look at somebody, a classmate's composition, you see contrast and value, say, I don't think this is the right value. I would go lighter in value. I would go darker in value. Help each other. You're more than welcome to help each other. Sir?
So we're trying to find the light that's hidden in the, well, not hidden, but you can see through.
If you
fog.
have the right hue with the right value and you make a tone, you're gonna have zero contrast of lightness and darkness. You can use it any way you want. There's no real secret involved to it. Yes, ma'am?
I was just gonna ask you to explain like the palette again. You did.
Well, do you remember how with the opposites attractive set make, A and B and blend them and use that palette? It's the same thing. Hue, relative value, blend them, use that palette. Now, do you have to use all of them way over here to over here? You could, but you don't have to. You can use them in here, okay? Just make sure it's the right relative value. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have class on Friday?
Do you want to come on Friday?
No,
You do?
no.
You want to come all day on Friday? And take an exam on color on Friday?
Of course.
A blue book exam?
That's a little too-
And you want it to be bleed into Saturday? No class on Friday. We good? All right, guys, thank you.